Picture this. It's the early 1980s. You're sitting at Ely McFly's, which is this local watering hole, just trying to enjoy a drink.
Right, just a normal night.
Exactly. But suddenly, at the tables next to you, a literal squabble breaks out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. On one side, you have engineers from the Apple II division. On the other, the team building the brand new Macintosh.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Totally. The Mac guys start screaming, "We're the future," and the Apple II guys scream back, "We're the money."
I mean, they weren't wrong.
Right. But then it escalates into a literal geek brawl. Like pens and pocket protectors are actually flying through the air.
It sounds like a comedy sketch, but it is a really perfect, visceral example of what happens when the way a company organizes its people goes completely off the rails.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We're jumping into the hidden forces that dictate whether a project succeeds brilliantly or, devolves into a civil war at a local bar.
Because a project isn't just a timeline or a spreadsheet.
No, not at all.
It's a living thing that exists within an environment. And today, we're pulling from Chapter 3 of a socio-technical project management textbook.
Right, to really get into the mechanics of it all.
Exactly. We are going to explore the anatomy of how companies organize work. So, looking at the mechanical side, everything from rigid corporate hierarchies to those complex hybrid structures.
And then we'll get into the invisible personality of a company, right? Its culture.
Yes, which ultimately decides a project's fate.
So, by the end of this deep dive, you will be able to diagnose exactly why your own workplace functions the way it does.
Or, why it dysfunctions.
Yeah, maybe more importantly, you will finally understand the mechanics behind why you feel so incredibly stressed when you get assigned to one of those cross-departmental tasks.
So to start, the way a project is structured is really the first major characteristic that affects its implementation.
Before we get back to the bar brawls and the flying pocket protectors.
Right. We need to establish the baseline of how companies operate. We have to understand the structural spectrum.
Okay, so at one end of that spectrum, we have the classic functional organization.
Yeah, right.
This is your standard traditional hierarchy. You have your marketing department, your engineering department, manufacturing, all of that.
The usual silos.
Exactly. When a new project is initiated, it doesn't get its own special team. It just gets sliced up and passed around through the normal management channels.
And, the appeal here is safety. It requires absolutely no radical changes to the parent organization.
Right, it's comfortable.
Yeah, and there is maximum flexibility in how you use your staff within their specific departments. Plus, it cultivates deep, specialized expertise.
So if the industrial design department is asked to modify a tool for left-handed users, they just do their part, sign off, and pass it over to production.
Exactly. But the downside is massive.
Oh, for sure.
The functional structure lacks focus because people are constantly getting pulled away by their primary day-to-day obligations.
Because they still have their normal jobs to do.
Right. Plus, the integration across different units is incredibly poor, which makes the whole process agonizingly slow.
I mean, think of the functional structure like a neighborhood potluck, where you have to route every single question through the neighborhood association president.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
It is. If you want to know if the potato salad has onions, you can't just walk over and ask the cook.
No, that would be too easy.
Right. You have to submit a formal request to the president, who passes it down to the cook, who passes the answer back up the chain.
And by the time you get your answer, the party is over.
Exactly. And you have 5 identical potato salads anyway.
That information bottleneck is exactly what happens. Project information has to circulate up and down the normal management chains.
Which means minor decisions take forever.
Exactly. So to combat that slowness, companies sometimes swing to the complete opposite end of the structural spectrum.
Which is the dedicated project teams.
Right. This is where you pull specialists entirely out of their normal jobs.
You put them together, physically separate them from the rest of the company, and they focus 100% of their energy on the project.
And they get a full-time project manager who often has, maximum freedom to just get it done.
No neighborhood association president.
Exactly. And the ultimate historical success story of this approach is Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works.
Oh, yeah, this is a crazy story.
Over half a century ago, Clarence Kelly Johnson pulled together a small, dedicated team of 23 engineers to build the first American jet fighter.
And they stripped away the red tape completely. No bureaucratic delays, no waiting for departmental approvals.
None of it. They operated totally unencumbered.
Fueled by a homemade whiskey that they euphemistically called Kickapoo Joy Juice. which is just amazing.
working at an absolute breakneck pace. And the crazy thing is, it actually worked.
Yeah, they built a jet fighter that could fly over 500 miles per hour, and they did it in just 43 days.
43 days. It is the dream scenario for rapid innovation.
That's for sure.
The team is simple, fast, and intensely cohesive. They share a single common goal.
And cross-functional integration is seamless because they are all locked in a room together.
Right, they don't have to send memos to other departments. They just turn their chairs around and talk to each other.
But, and this is a big but, there is a very dark side to this isolation.
There is. When you separate a team like that, they can develop a condition called projectitis.
Projectitis.
Yeah, a dedicated team builds up this intense hubris, a holier-than-thou attitude that antagonizes the rest of the company.
Which brings us right back to Steve Jobs and the Macintosh team at Apple.
Exactly. Jobs pampered his dedicated team to an extreme degree.
I mean, he gave them at-the-desk massages.
He bought them a Bosendorfer grand piano.
A grand piano in the office. And he stocked their coolers with freshly squeezed orange juice. He essentially created this elite club.
Meanwhile, the Apple II division, the people who were actually bringing in the company's revenue and keeping the lights on, they were furious.
Understandably. Jobs and his dedicated team started calling everyone else bozos.
The isolation bred outright hostility. It got so bad that John Sculley, the chairman who replaced Jobs, said Apple had evolved into two warring companies.
He actually called the street between their buildings the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone.
Right, and that division is exactly how you end up throwing pens at your coworkers in Elon McFly's.
It's wild, but the divisiveness really undermines the entire point of the company.
Exactly. So you have functional structures that are too slow and dedicated teams that cause civil wars.
So what's the solution?
Well, in response, the corporate world invented a compromise. It's called the matrix structure.
The matrix.
Yeah.
This is a horizontal project management structure that is literally overlaid on top of the normal vertical functional hierarchy.
Right, it's a grid.
Which means, for the poor employees trapped in the middle of this grid, you suddenly have two chains of command.
You report to your normal functional boss, and you report to your new horizontal project manager simultaneously.
It sounds like a headache.
It is an attempt to get the best of both worlds, really. You share resources optimally across multiple projects, but you also create legitimate project leadership.
But in practice, this creates a spectrum of power. Right?
Yeah, you have a weak matrix where the project manager is basically just a staff assistant acting as a coordinator.
So no real financial authority.
Exactly. At the other end, you have a strong matrix, which feels almost like a dedicated team.
Where the project manager controls the scope and the assignments.
Yes, and the functional manager just provides the specialized personnel on a need basis.
And sitting right in the middle is the balanced matrix.
Which is a highly delicate, precarious system.
Right, where the project manager decides what needs to be done and when, but the functional manager decides how it will be done.
It requires both parties to work closely together and jointly approve decisions. But this introduces a massive mechanical flaw.
Right, because there is an age-old management principle called unity of command.
Exactly. It's the simple idea that a worker should only ever have one boss to avoid conflicting priorities.
And the matrix intentionally violates that principle.
It does, which creates an absolute nightmare for the people involved.
There is a direct quote from the source material from a project manager caught in one of these structures that sums it up perfectly.
Oh, I love this quote.
They said, "All matrix managers must keep up their health and take stress tabs."
Stress tabs. But the human toll really is significant. Let's look at the classic scenario of Moss and McAdams from the text.
Right, the accounting firm operating in a matrix.
Yeah. So you have Bruce Palmer, an audit manager, and he desperately needs his star accountant, an Army vet named Zeke Olds.
He needs him to finish a crucial, time-sensitive audit in Johnsonville.
Exactly. But suddenly, a consultant named Ken Crosby swoops in and demands Zeke for a massive new consulting project in Springfield.
It's a textbook resource struggle, so the office manager tries to compromise.
Right. They tell Zeke to split his time. Mornings on the audit with Palmer, afternoons on the consulting project with Crosby.
But Zeke is a smart guy, and he recognizes the chaos of having two bosses who can't agree.
So he starts playing the system.
Naturally.
He shows up 30 to 60 minutes late to Palmer's audit office, blaming Crosby's long morning meetings.
And then he starts taking long lunches at a new Thai restaurant with Crosby's team.
Soon, Zeke is leaving early on a Friday to go to a Milwaukee Brewers baseball game.
Using corporate tickets that Crosby gave him as a reward.
Yep. While Palmer, the original functional boss, is watching his audit slip dangerously behind schedule.
So Palmer becomes totally paranoid. I mean, he feels guilty just for confronting Zeke.
Because Zeke is technically doing work for the company.
Right, and Palmer is stressed out of his mind because he has no real authority to stop Crosby from poaching his guy's energy.
Legitimate conflict over resources very quickly spills over into personal animosity. It breeds infighting and tension.
Okay, wait, I have to push back here.
Sure, go ahead.
If the Matrix intentionally violates the fundamental principle of unity of command and causes employees to play the system, while managers literally take stress tabs to survive the paranoia, why on earth do companies do it?
It's a fair question.
Is this idea of optimal utilization of resources really worth the emotional toll of reporting to conflicting bosses?
Well, from an organizational standpoint, the flexibility is often deemed worth the pain.
Really?
Yeah. If you are a company that cannot afford to tie up your absolute best critical personnel like Zeke Olds on just one single project, you have to share them.
You can't let your top talent sit idle for 5 minutes.
Exactly, but you are absolutely right about the chaos. When upper management realized that the Matrix was breeding overwhelming stress and projects were bleeding money due to infighting, they knew they needed a referee.
Right. They couldn't get rid of the Matrix, so they created a new mechanism to control the madness.
Enter the PMO.
The Project Management Office.
Because Matrix systems were struggling to finish projects on time and within budget, companies created these centralized units to oversee the execution of projects across the entire organization.
And how these PMOs function usually evolves as a company realizes just how much trouble they are in. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, imagine a company realizing they're losing millions on overlapping projects. Their first instinct is just to get some basic visibility.
Right, so they set up what we call a weather station.
Which just tracks progress. They're asking, are we on budget? Which projects are actually on track?
But just watching the weather doesn't stop the storm.
No, it doesn't.
So eventually, the company upgrades the PMO to a control tower.
Now, their primary function is to establish standardized rules.
Right. They protect project management as a profession, set the best practices, and act as consultants to support the struggling project managers.
Then, if the company keeps growing, they need a resource pool.
This type of PMO provides a cadre of highly trained project managers to the organization.
Operating almost like an internal academy so that every new project gets a certified expert to lead it.
Exactly. But the final evolution is where it gets incredibly serious. The command and control center.
Okay, this sounds intense.
It is. This PMO has direct authority. They are the key decision makers.
Meaning they can approve massive changes and they can unilaterally terminate projects.
Right. To see why a company would give a PMO that much power, look at Telstra, Australia's largest telecom company.
Ah, yeah, the 2018 PMO of the Year snapshot.
Yes. Back in 2012, they were facing massive internal chaos. Roughly 30% of their investment programs were failing to meet goals.
30%? That's huge.
It was. Pet projects were surviving not because they were profitable, but because the managers behind them yelled the loudest.
So they launched a dedicated capital planning and delivery PMO.
And this wasn't just a couple of people tracking spreadsheets.
No, they eventually had 24 full-time staff overseeing a portfolio of over 1,200 projects.
Managing an annual value of more than 3.77 billion Australian dollars.
That is a staggering amount of money.
To stop the bleeding, they implemented rigorous gonna-go stage gate processes.
Okay, the stage gate process is vital to understand here.
Yeah, let's break it down.
They basically built strict toll booths into the project timelines. Instead of funding a project from start to finish based on a promise, the project team had to stop at predetermined gates.
And if they couldn't objectively prove their value and return on investment at chicken number 1, the PMO did not give them the funding to pass through the gate to phase 2.
The project was killed on the spot.
Exactly. And by ruthlessly ensuring that only the best projects with the best returns were prioritized, that PMO helped Telstra save over 220 million Australian dollars over 3 years.
It completely changed the daily lives of the project managers there.
It's a massive success story for organizational control.
But let me ask you this.
Sure.
If a company has to rely on a command and control PMO to aggressively terminate failing projects and force people to follow the rules through coal booths, doesn't that imply the underlying organizational structure is broken?
That is a very astute observation.
Like, are PMOs essentially just Very expensive Band-Aids for a toxic matrix?
I mean, a PMO can enforce standards and it can build toll booth, but it cannot fundamentally alter the daily human interactions.
Structure and referees can only do so much.
Exactly. Which brings us to the missing variable in all of this.
Right. You can have two companies with the exact same matrix structure, say AT&T and Hewlett-Packard, but they manage projects completely differently.
And the secret ingredient that explains that difference is the organization's personality. Its culture.
The invisible hand.
Organizational culture is a system of shared norms, beliefs, values, and assumptions. It provides a sense of identity for the members.
And most importantly, it creates social order.
Yes. It tells you what is permissible behavior and what isn't, without anyone ever having to write it down in an employee handbook.
Which means if you want to figure out your own company's actual culture, you have to become a corporate anthropologist.
I love that analogy.
You can't just read the company's About Us webpage.
No, definitely not.
You have to look at the physical characteristics, the architecture of the building, the dress code.
You have to observe the behavioral pace. Like, is everyone methodical, or is there a frantic urgency?
And you have to listen to the folklore.
The stories people tell are crucial. Who are the heroes in your office? Who are the villains?
What behavior gets you promoted, and what behavior gets you sent to project management purgatory?
Exactly. Let's look at Google. Their culture is intentionally designed to reflect unconventional ways of keeping people collaborative.
They have a 24-hour campus, the Googleplex in Mountain View, with gourmet meals and indoor gyms to blur the line between work and life.
But they also have very specific behavioral norms, like the 7-minute stand-up meeting.
Which is such a weirdly specific number.
But the mechanics of that meeting are entirely cultural. Project teams stand up 7 minutes after the hour because historically it took 7 minutes to walk across the massive campus.
And everyone literally stands.
Yes, the mechanism there is simple. Making people stand keeps them from getting too comfortable, which saves time and keeps the urgency high.
They also have the custom of dogfooding.
Ah, yes.
A project team releases a functional, early prototype of a future product to thousands of Google employees to test drive.
And the culture dictates that those employees do not hold back.
They give brutal, honest feedback to the developers.
And that mechanism of brutal honesty prevents the company from launching bad products to the public.
Now, you contrast that with 3M.
Right, very different vibe.
Their culture is all about entrepreneurial freedom. Their philosophy is, if you put fences around people, you get sheep.
I mean, that's a great quote. So they implemented the 15% rule, encouraging technical staff to spend up to 15% of their time on projects of their own choosing.
The mechanism of experimental dueling is what leads to their biggest breakthroughs.
Culture is also heavily embedded in physical folklore, too.
Like at CADD-tech, the flamboyant co-founder, Rin Zafiropoulos, spent a weekend with his top management team handmaking a beautiful teak conference table.
And that table wasn't just furniture, it became a physical symbol.
A legendary story that reinforced the unwritten rule of teamwork every time someone sat down at it.
So we have the structures, the functional hierarchies, the dedicated teams, the chaotic matrices.
And we have the culture, this invisible set of rules and stories.
The question is, how do they interact to determine if a project survives?
And the text gives us this great metaphor. Think of the organizational culture as a river and your specific project as a boat.
When you are organizing and completing projects in a culture that is highly conducive to project management.
A culture where teamwork, cross-functional cooperation, and healthy conflict are valued.
It is like paddling downstream. Much less effort is required.
The current of the culture naturally pushes the project boat forward.
But if you are trying to complete a project in a toxic culture, you are paddling upstream.
Imagine a culture that discourages cooperation, has a low tolerance for conflict,
and rewards people for cultivating favorable relationships rather than actually performing.
The project manager isn't just fighting the natural obstacles of building the product. They are fighting the prevailing negative forces of the river itself.
And this completely dictates managerial strategy. Well, when the dominant organizational culture actively inhibits collaboration and innovation, the recommended strategy is to physically insulate the project team from that parent culture.
Which leads to one of the most fascinating corporate survival stories out there, IBM in 1980.
Right. They were trying to develop their personal computer.
But IBM's parent culture at the time was incredibly sluggish, bureaucratic, and heavily reliant on an overabundance of specialized computer knowledge.
If they tried to build the PC inside that culture, paddling upstream would have killed the project before it started.
So they didn't try to change IBM's entire culture overnight. They built a highly insulated boat.
They established the PC project team in a warehouse in Boca Raton, Florida.
Geographically and culturally, thousands of miles away from the corporate headquarters in New York.
They essentially created a distinct counterculture just to get the project done quickly.
But wait, if paddling upstream is that exhausting, and a massive corporation has to literally hide its own team in a warehouse in Florida just to get a computer built, shouldn't a company just focus on fixing its toxic river rather than constantly building insulated boats?
It is the ultimate leadership dilemma.
Right.
In a perfect world, yes, you clean the river, but changing a deep-seated organizational culture takes years, sometimes decades.
And business moves fast.
Exactly. When you have severe resource constraints and the market demands rapid innovation like the dawn of the personal computer, you do not have time to fix the river.
You need a dedicated, insulated boat right now, or your company sinks entirely.
The structural choice to isolate a team is a pragmatic survival tactic against a hostile culture.
So as you were listening to this, take a hard look at your own daily work life. Are you trapped in a weak matrix? Forced to take stress tabs because you were caught between two bosses who refuse to compromise?
Or are you suffering from projectitis, looking down on the rest of the company from your isolated, insulated team?
Or maybe you are just exhausted because you're paddling your boat upstream against a rigid, toxic culture where the unwritten rules are constantly working against you.
Diagnosing the lay of the land is the first step. You have to understand both the formal mechanical structure and the informal cultural rules to navigate your project successfully.
Which leaves us with one final, very modern question for you.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time exploring how culture heavily relies on physical space. Google's massive campus and indoor gyms, Versatech's handmade teak conference table.
The actual water cooler where folklore is whispered?
The physical environment is a massive driver of those unwritten shared norms.
It anchors the culture in reality.
So what happens to the river of culture in an era of fully remote work?
It's a great question.
If your company operates as a distributed digital gig economy, and there is no shared physical space, no DMZ between buildings, no local bar to brawl in, does the culture dry up entirely?
Do our project management boats just get stranded on the rocks when there is no physical river to float on?
It's definitely something for you to mull over the next time you log into a virtual status meeting.